Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the blueprint behind pretty much every smart business decision you see. We're talking about moving from just, pure guesswork to having a rock-solid plan.
So, have you ever really stopped to think about it? How does a massive organization like the NFL figure out how to get more women to watch football? Or how does a company like Starbucks land on the perfect, eco-friendly cup? I can tell you right now, it's definitely not a lucky guess. Nope. It all comes down to having a very specific, very detailed plan.
This quote just nails it. It calls a research design the heart and soul of a project. And that is the perfect way to put it. Because without that solid, beating heart, all the data, all the analysis in the world, it's basically useless. You're just wandering around in the dark, hoping to bump into an answer.
So let's be super clear here. A research design isn't just some vague idea, right? It's the actual blueprint, the master plan. It gets into the real nitty-gritty of the whole investigation. It specifies every single procedure you need to follow to get the right information. It really is the strategy that guides every single step you take.
All right, so before you can solve a puzzle, what do you need to do? You've got to find all the pieces, right? And before you can measure a room, you need a flashlight to even see what's in there. Well, that's exactly the job of our first tool. It's a method designed specifically for exploring the unknown, and it's called exploratory research.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is really the first big fork in the road for any research project. You've got two main paths. On one side, you have exploratory research. Think of this like being a detective at a crime scene. You're just gathering clues, getting a feel for the situation, and your approach has to be super flexible. It's all about discovery. But then, on the other side, you have conclusive research. Now, you're the prosecutor in court. You have a very specific theory, and your job is to prove it with hard, structured data. It's all about proof.
So why would you even use this exploratory approach? Well, think about it. It helps you nail down the problem you're trying to solve with way more precision. It helps you identify different courses of action, maybe some you hadn't even thought of. And it helps you develop the hypotheses you're going to test later. At its core, exploratory research is what helps you figure out which questions you should even be asking in the first place.
And here's a perfect real-world example of this in action. When Waterpik wanted to design a new shower head, they didn't just sit in a room and guess what people wanted. No way. They ran brainstorming sessions, they held consumer focus groups, and they generated over, get this, 140 different concepts. They truly, deeply explored the whole landscape of possibilities before they even thought about committing to a single design.
All right, so our flashlight has shown us the general shape of the room. We've explored the territory. Now it's time to pull out the measuring tape and map everything out with some real precise detail. And this brings us to our next tool in the toolkit. Descriptive research.
Now, unlike the freewheeling, flexible nature of exploratory work, descriptive research has to be meticulously planned out. There's no winging it here. Researchers rely on a framework, you could call it the 6 W's, to make sure they get it right. They have to define who to talk to, what information to get, when and where to get it, why they're even doing the project, and the exact way they'll collect the data. Seriously, every single one of those W's needs a crystal clear answer before you can even think about starting.
So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, check this out. A major survey asked consumers, hey, what social issues do you want businesses to actually address? And the results? They were crystal clear. Public education came right out on top, with a third of people, 33%, saying it was a major concern. See, this isn't a guess. It's a precise measurement of public opinion at a specific point in time.
Now, within this world of descriptive research, there are two main ways to go about it. The first is what's called a cross-sectional design. The easiest way to think about this is like taking a single snapshot. It tells you exactly what's happening at one single moment in time. But then there's the longitudinal design. This isn't a snapshot, this is the whole movie. Here, you're measuring the same group of people over and over again to see how things change and what trends emerge over time.
And let me show you why that difference is so important. Okay, imagine you take those two snapshots of the market, right? One in period 1 and another in period 2. Now you look at this table, and it seems like, well, nothing happened. The market shares for brand A, brand B, and brand C look
totally stable. I mean, 200 people bought A, 300 bought B, 500 bought C. Both times. Looks like an open and shut case. End of story, right?
Well, not so fast. Because by switching to that longitudinal design, by watching the movie instead of just looking at the snapshot, we see the real story. And honestly, it's absolute chaos. What you're seeing here is called a brand switching matrix. Just look at brand B. Sure, it ended up with 300 customers again, but it only kept 100 of its original ones. It actually lost a whopping 175 customers to brand C. The snapshot showed total stability, but the movie reveals a brutal, cutthroat, competitive market churning just beneath the surface. It's a completely different story.
Okay, so we've seen that we can explore, and we've seen that we can describe. But what if you need to know why something is happening? What if you need to actually prove that A causes B? Well, for that, my friends, you need to pull out the real power tool from our kit, and that is causal research.
This is basically your classic science experiment, just applied to the world of business. The entire goal here is to prove a cause and effect relationship. You deliberately manipulate one thing, the cause, to see what kind of effect it has on another variable, all while controlling for everything else you possibly can.
And you want a high-stakes example? It doesn't get much bigger than this. Before Microsoft launched the radically redesigned Office 2007, they absolutely needed proof that it was better. So what did they do? They set up a showdown, a classic controlled experiment with 3 different versions of their software, Office XP, Office 2003, and the brand new 2007. And each version was tested by a carefully matched group of users to keep things fair.
And the results? They were absolutely decisive. Office 2007 was rated significantly better on pretty much every key metric. Ease of use, capabilities, user experience, you name it. By controlling that experiment, Microsoft proved that their new design, the cause, directly led to a better user experience, the effect. And that is what gave them the confidence, the green light they needed to launch it to the world.
So, as you can probably tell by now, these tools, Exploratory, Descriptive, and Causal, they don't live in their own little bubbles. They're not used in isolation. The real magic happens when they're all combined, working together, step by step, to build a complete picture, from the very start all the way to the finish.
Citibank's project to create a new financial package for seniors is just a perfect illustration of this whole journey. First, they started with exploratory research, focus groups, to just understand what seniors needed and to brainstorm some ideas. Then, that led them to descriptive research. They used surveys in malls to narrow down and refine the product's features. And then finally, they used causal research, a real-world test market in 6 of their branches, to prove the concept actually worked before they went for a big national launch. It's just a beautiful logical flow, from discovery to description to proof.
But, of course, even the most perfect blueprint can have flaws. And a really smart researcher knows that getting good results isn't just about picking the right methods. It's also about knowing where things can go wrong and being ready for it.
Okay, now this is something that genuinely surprises a lot of people. Most of us, when we think about errors in research, we worry about the sample size, right? Not asking enough people. That's what's called random sampling error. But look at this. It's actually the smaller piece of the pie. The much bigger threat is something called non-sampling error. We're talking about things like poorly worded questions, biased analysis, or just simple human mistakes. These are the hidden gremlins that can totally sink an otherwise good research project.
So, after this whole whirlwind tour, you really do have a new lens for looking at the world. You can now see the hidden architecture behind the big decisions that companies make every day. And understanding the difference between exploring, describing, and proving cause and effect, well, it gives you a super powerful framework for thinking critically about pretty much any claim you hear out there.
But this all leaves us with one final and kind of tough question. We've seen how incredibly powerful these tools are for finding the truth. So, where's the line? When does designing a study to get an answer cross over into designing a study to get the answer you want? It's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.